Hi everyone, Dr. Brayboy, Director of the QEP on Advising here. This PowerPoint will review points for critical thinking, something you may need some guidance on to ensure you're thinking logically and deliberately, which will help you understand and interpret text, other readings, and conversations and discussions in a way that will help you with assignments and discussions throughout your college career. Why is it important to think critically? Even when people are irritating, it's important to listen to what they have to say. There can be more than one right answer to almost any question, so we want to be sure to consider multiple viewpoints. And using emotions to make decisions doesn't always lead us down the right path. Without critical thinking, interpretations may be biased or based on our own prejudices, so we want to challenge our old assumptions to pave the path for new ideas. So before we look at how critical thinking can help you in your college career and how to become a better critical thinker, let's look at a definition of critical thinking. Paul and Elder, who wrote the Miniature Guide to Critical Thinking, which you're provided a link for in this module, defined critical thinking as the art of analyzing and evaluating thinking with a view to improving it. So how can critical thinking help in college and in life? Those who think critically consider the most important and relative information before making decisions. Those who think critically are open-minded, which means being aware of assumptions, prior associations, and possible outcomes of our decisions. Critical thinkers believe that thinking is proactive rather than reactive and emotional, and find that thinking through arguments to the end will result in better outcomes. Critical thinkers also know that solutions to complex problems often require consulting with others. One way to help you reason effectively is to use a checklist when reasoning through issues. First, does your reasoning have a purpose? Can you state that purpose clearly? Is the goal of your reasoning realistic? Next, what is the question you're trying to answer? When you reason, you're trying to figure something out, answer a question, or solve a problem. Does the question have one right answer, or is there more than one reasonable answer? Third, what assumptions are you making? Are they justified? Are the assumptions shaping your point of view? Do they need to be questioned? What is your point of view? All reasoning has perspective or viewpoint. Does your viewpoint have weaknesses that need to be challenged? Are you being fair-minded, weighing the strength of your viewpoint more heavily than the challenges? Is your reasoning supported by data that's relevant and credible? Does this data suggest other explanations? Is the data you're using accurate to the question you're trying to answer? Do you have key concepts and theories to guide your reasoning? Or are there alternate explanations you might arrive at based on these concepts and theories? Do you have an agenda, and is your reasoning being distorted to fit this agenda? Remember that conclusions are reached by drawing inferences and interpretations. Does the data support the conclusions you've drawn? Do the inferences match up with one another? And last, consider that your reasoning leads to consequences and has implications. If someone accepts your reasoning, what might the consequences be? So where do you start? Well, start by asking yourself some questions. First, what's the question you're trying to answer? Does your thinking have a purpose? Do you need more information? What information and experience do you already have that'll help you in the process of reasoning? Do you need to consider other viewpoints? Can you explain the main idea of your reasoning and the information you're using to reason? Have you challenged any assumptions you've made when arriving at your conclusion? And last, what would happen if someone accepted your conclusion or results? Paul and Elder, whose Guide to Critical Thinking is provided in a link in this module, suggest that if you want quality thinking, you'll apply universal intellectual standards to your reasoning. First, examine whether the point is clear. Could it be explained in another shorter and clearer way? For example, the question, what can be done about homelessness in America, is unclear. To answer this question, you'd need a better understanding of what the person is asking. So a clearer question might be, What can local governments do to ensure that homeless individuals have the resources that might help them tackle the issues that result in homelessness? Alcohol and drug addiction, mental illness, unemployment. Even this question is somewhat broad, but at least it narrows the scope and helps you consider what the real problem is. Next, accuracy. Is a statement true? Can it be verified? For example, a statement can be true but not accurate, such as, Penny is a genius. Just as advertisers and politicians make clear but not accurate statements, our own thoughts may not be accurate. So we need points of reference if we want to validate statements. Additionally, a statement can be clear and accurate but not precise. For example, the statement, Penny needs to exercise more. Well, how much more? Is this problem large or small? The question to ask here is, can you be more specific? A statement can be clear, accurate, and precise, but still not be relevant. So if you tell your professor, I worked really hard on this assignment, and the professor answered, so what? The statement really isn't relevant. Even though a statement is clear, accurate, precise, and relevant, it might be lacking sufficient depth, meaning it's shallow. Here's one. If we provided drug and alcohol prevention in school, teens wouldn't become alcoholics or drug addicts. Well, maybe, but alcohol and drug addiction are deep and complicated issues. The question to ask here is that the most significant factor to consider? Continuing with the universal intellectual standards, a statement can be clear, accurate, precise, relevant, and deep, meaning it has enough depth, but too narrow. Think about statements you hear during political campaigns, statements that present only the liberal or only the conservative point of view. We too can be narrow in our thinking. So broaden your perspective by asking the question, what is the other side? A statement can be all the things that I've talked about and still not be logical, meaning it doesn't make sense. For example, since there is no evidence that UFOs exist, they must exist. Because a statement hasn't proven to be false doesn't mean it's true. Or statements that appeal to the bandwagon, such as, since many people say voting fraud is real, it is real. A statement isn't true just because people say it's true. Or statements that are accepted as true because a smart or educated person says the statement is true. So listen to information that is being widely touted during that pandemic. Evaluate whether statements made by supposedly smart and educated people are true. Or statements or basing our thinking on fallacies, unsound or faulty reasoning. People can use fallacies to strengthen arguments, but if the reader sees through them, our credibility will be affected. So beware of ideas based on isolated events or personal experience. Beware of arguments that something is true because it's the most likely scenario. So consider carefully whether the conclusion flows from the evidence. Significance is another factor to consider. Significance isn't exactly the same as relevance. So, for example, many factors may be, but not all of them significant or important. For example, lung cancer may have many causes, but smoking is probably the most relevant cause. And last, considering fairness is important to evaluating thinking. Conclusions should be based on multiple perspectives to guide against bias, distortion, and assumptions. Be skeptical about what you hear and read. Ask questions before accepting information. For many of you, these universal standards are common sense in a structured format, and in a way it is. However, using these standards can help us see how they fit together when we get into arguments or are trying to reason through complex problems. In summary, when evaluating information, think about how it confirms or fails to confirm what you already know. Consider your past experiences and explore whether other cultures think about and approach issues to expand your thinking. A logical approach to analyzing arguments will help you arrive at multiple solutions to a problem. So what can we do to avoid flawed thinking? First, be an active listener. Don't immediately jump to what you want to say. Be sure to listen carefully. Don't react based solely on emotion, which can not only result in misguided conclusions, but often cause damage to relationships. Be sure to verify information with facts from credible sources. How can you verify that a source is credible? Well, make sure that you use more than one source, and be sure that the source doesn't have an agenda. Something that can be difficult to check sometimes online, but it is possible. And consider the other side of the story, because there always is one. So we hope these ideas will help you be more systematic and logical in your thinking. For additional information on how to think critically, click the link for Paul and Elder's Miniature Guide to Critical Thinking provided in the module.